"So this is what you traded me for?" And then his hand struck her across the face in front of 300 guests. The sound cut clean through the Blackwood Grand Ballroom. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, scattering light across pressed tuxedos and silk gowns. A violinist faltered mid-note. A waiter froze with a tray of champagne suspended in mid-air. The annual Children's Hospital fundraising gala, an evening built on polished manners and quiet generosity, collapsed into silence. Nina Caldwell did not fall. Her head turned with the force of the blow, a warm sting spreading across her cheek. Slowly, almost mechanically, she lifted her hand to the reddening skin. Ethan Cole stood inches from her, breathing hard, eyes sharp with accusation. "You don't belong here," he said loudly, sweeping his arm toward the room. "Look at this place. Look at these people. You were never enough for rooms like this, Nina." A murmur moved through the crowd. "You think that dress makes you one of them?" he continued, voice rising. "You were barely comfortable at my parents' 4th of July barbecue. Now you're playing society queen?" He laughed bitterly. "You left me for this, for money, for status. Don't pretend you suddenly grew into something you're not." The humiliation was intentional, public, designed to shrink her. For one fragile heartbeat, Nina felt the old instinct press against her ribs, the instinct to apologize, to calm him, to absorb the shame so the scene would dissolve. Then she heard the measured footsteps. Vincent Moretti crossed the marble floor without haste, yet the crowd parted instinctively. At 40, he carried himself with the contained authority of a man accustomed to being watched. His tuxedo was immaculate, his expression unreadable. He reached Nina and placed a steady arm around her waist. "Nina," he said quietly, his voice meant only for her. "Look at me." She did. "Are you hurt?" The simplicity of the question steadied her more than the touch. "No," she whispered. Ethan scoffed. "Oh, please. You're playing hero now?" He pointed at Nina. "She doesn't belong here." She climbed her way in. She always needed someone stronger to carry her. Vincent's gaze settled on Ethan at last. "You struck her," Vincent said evenly. "She deserved to be reminded who she is," Ethan shot back. Before Vincent could respond, Nina turned slightly toward him. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. "I didn't want this to affect you. I didn't think he'd show up. I didn't mean to cause a scene." For a moment, something like pain flickered across Vincent's face, not anger at the situation, but at the fact that she felt responsible. He shifted his attention back to her fully, shutting out the room. "You did not cause this," he said firmly. "He did. But this is your event," she murmured. "Your reputation." "My reputation," Vincent interrupted gently, "is not fragile." The words were calm, but they carried weight. He brushed a strand of hair back from her face, careful not to touch the mark. "You will never apologize for someone else's lack of control," he said. Ethan laughed sharply. "You see? She always needs rescuing." Vincent's eyes hardened, though his voice did not rise. "No," he said. "She deserves respect." The punch came then, swift, precise, undeniable. Vincent's fist drove forward in a clean line, connecting squarely with Ethan's face. The impact was heavy, final. Ethan stumbled backward into a chair that screeched across the marble. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Ethan blinked, stunned, one hand flying to his nose as blood seeped between his fingers. "What is wrong with you?" he demanded, disoriented. Vincent did not advance. He did not posture. He simply raised his hand slightly. The two security men positioned near the exits stepped forward immediately. "Remove him," Vincent said. His tone was not heated. It was decisive. The guards took hold of Ethan's arms. "This is assault," Ethan sputtered, trying to regain his footing. "You can't just... You entered uninvited," Vincent replied evenly. "You struck a woman in a room full of witnesses. You will leave now." Ethan struggled weakly, but the security detail was efficient and controlled. "And understand this," Vincent added, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed ballroom. "You and any company associated with you will never conduct business with Moretti Logistics again." A ripple of recognition moved through the guests at that declaration. In Chicago, that statement had consequences beyond personal insult. Ethan's bravado cracked. "You can't blacklist me over this," he said, but the certainty was gone. Vincent stepped closer one final time. "You mistook her silence for weakness," he said quietly. "That was your first mistake." The guards began guiding Ethan toward the ballroom doors. "Wait," Vincent said. They paused. Vincent pointed directly at Ethan. "You said she doesn't belong here." Ethan swallowed. "Nina Caldwell is my fiancée," Vincent declared, his voice steady and unmistakable. "She is going to be my wife, and she is fully entitled to stand in any room I stand in." The words settled over the ballroom like a verdict. Ethan stared at him, blood staining his cuff, confusion overtaking arrogance. "She's not," he began weakly. "She is," Vincent said simply. The doors opened. The faint noise of downtown Chicago drifted in for a brief moment before Ethan was escorted out. The doors closed behind him with quiet finality. Silence lingered. Then, slowly, the string quartet resumed. Nina stood still, her cheek warm, her pulse steadying. Vincent turned back to her. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," he said quietly. Across the room, an elderly donor lifted her glass in silent acknowledgement. Conversations restarted. Tentative at first, then stronger. The gala moved forward, but the echo of that slap and the declaration that followed would not fade as easily. The humiliation had lasted seconds. The consequences had just begun. By the time the final pledge was announced and the last speech concluded, the story had already begun traveling beyond the walls of the Blackwood Grand. Chicago was a city that prided itself on discretion, especially among those who had something to lose. But 300 witnesses meant 300 versions of the same event, and by midnight, phones were buzzing quietly in coat pockets across the North Shore. Nina stood near the tall windows overlooking the river, watching the reflection of city lights ripple across dark water. The faint mark on her cheek had softened to a dull warmth, but she could still feel where Ethan's hand had landed. Vincent approached with 2 glasses of water instead of champagne. "You should drink something," he said. She accepted the glass, her fingers brushing his. "I'm sorry," she murmured again, though more quietly this time. He regarded her steadily. "We settled that. I know. But I still feel it. That's because you're decent," he replied. "Decent people feel responsible for things that aren't theirs." She gave a faint, humorless smile. "You don't seem worried." Vincent glanced across the ballroom where donors were shaking hands, smoothing lapels, carefully pretending nothing extraordinary had occurred. "Worried about what?" "The optics," she said. "The headlines. The fact that you punched someone in a room full of judges and hospital board members." A small pause. "I didn't punch a donor," he said calmly. "I removed a problem." She studied him. "It's never that simple." "It often is," he replied. But even as he spoke, one of his security men approached discreetly. "Sir," the man said quietly. Mr. Cole was escorted to the street. He attempted to argue with hotel staff. CPD was notified. He left before officers arrived. Vincent nodded once. "Make sure there's no further disturbance." "Yes, sir." The guard stepped away. Nina exhaled slowly. "He won't let this go." Vincent did not immediately answer. Ethan Cole had not simply shown up out of wounded pride. That much Vincent knew. Ethan worked for Hamilton Crest Capital, a mid-tier investment firm that had been circling one of Moretti Logistics' waterfront properties for months. They had approached through intermediaries, shell inquiries, subtle pressure. Vincent had declined. Now the overlap felt less accidental. "He may not," Vincent admitted, "but he no longer has access to you." "That's not what I meant." He turned to face her fully. "What did you mean?" "I mean he'll try to hurt you," she said. "Professionally, publicly, however he can." Vincent considered that. "Then he will discover what that costs," he said evenly. There was no threat in his tone, only calculation. The remainder of the evening concluded with practiced composure. Vincent shook hands. Nina thanked donors. An older couple from Wilmette pressed her hands warmly and told her how brave she had been. A retired federal judge nodded approvingly at Vincent but said nothing. By the time they stepped into the cool night air, the city felt different. Their car waited at the curb, black and understated. The driver opened the door without comment. Inside, the quiet was heavy but not strained. Nina leaned back against the leather seat, staring at the passing lights along Lakeshore Drive. "I meant what I said," she began. Vincent glanced at her. "About?" "Not apologizing for someone else's lack of control." She swallowed. I just didn't expect to be tested on it tonight. He watched the skyline ahead. You handled it, he said. I froze. You stood. She looked at him, surprised. That's not the same, she argued. It is, he replied calmly. Fear is a reflex. Staying upright is a decision. The car merged smoothly onto the highway north toward Lake Forest. For a few minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Nina said quietly, he used to tell me I wasn't ambitious enough. Vincent did not interrupt. He said I didn't understand how the world worked, that I was too soft. She looked down at her hands. I believed him. For years. And now? Now I think he needed me small, she said. Vincent nodded once. Some men confuse control with strength. She turned to him. You punched him. Yes. That wasn't control? He met her gaze directly. No. She waited. It was consequence, he said. The words settled between them. When they reached the estate in Lake Forest, the house stood quiet and illuminated against the dark. Mature trees framed the long drive. It was not ostentatious, but it was unmistakably secure. Inside, the staff had already retired for the night. Nina removed her heels near the foyer and walked barefoot across polished wood floors. The house felt calm, insulated from the city's undercurrents. Vincent loosened his cufflinks and placed them carefully on the entry table. Your knuckles, she said suddenly. He glanced down. The skin across his right hand was reddened. It's nothing, he replied. She stepped closer anyway and took his hand gently. The contrast struck her, his hand, broad and solid. Hers, smaller, steady now. You didn't have to, she said softly. Yes, he answered. I did. They stood like that for a moment in the quiet foyer. Then his phone vibrated. He released her hand and checked the screen. Who is it? She asked. Michael, he said, his attorney. Vincent answered without stepping away. Yes. A pause. I expected that. Another pause. No, we'll handle it. He ended the call. Nina felt the shift before he spoke. What happened? Hamilton Crest has already contacted one of the board members, he said. They're suggesting my conduct was unstable, unfit for partnership. She inhaled slowly. That was fast. It was prepared, he corrected. She understood then. This wasn't just about me showing up with you, she said. No. Ethan knew. Yes. Silence stretched. I didn't know, she said quietly. I know. She walked toward the kitchen, needing movement. The familiar scent of polished wood and faint espresso lingered in the air. She poured 2 glasses of water from the filtered tap, more for something to do than thirst. When she turned back, Vincent was watching her not with doubt, not with suspicion, but with careful consideration. You said you left him because you couldn't breathe, he said. She nodded. That part, he continued, was not about me. No. And this, he gestured subtly toward the phone in his hand, toward the unseen machinery already turning in the background, is not about your worth. She crossed the room and set 1 glass in front of him. I don't want to be the reason you go to war, she said. Vincent's expression softened slightly. You are not the reason, he replied. You are the line. She absorbed that. Outside, a distant train horn echoed faintly across the North Shore night. The slap had been public. The punch had been decisive. But what followed would be quieter, strategic, legal. If this story moved you, tell us what part stayed with you the most. Share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters here. If you believe in quiet strength, justice, and standing your ground, please like this episode and subscribe to the channel. There are more powerful stories waiting for you, and we would be honored to have you with us. Nina felt it now, the shift from humiliation to confrontation, and this time, she would not stand behind anyone. She would stand beside him. By morning, Chicago had chosen its version of the story. Nina woke just after 6, the house still wrapped in the pale blue quiet that comes before sunrise. For a moment, she forgot. The sheets were cool. The room was still. Then memory returned, not as pain, but as clarity. She sat up slowly and walked to the window. Beyond the glass, Lake Michigan stretched wide and gray, early light breaking across its surface. 8 years ago, Vincent had stood somewhere like this after losing his wife in a winter highway accident. She knew that much. He had told her only once, without embellishment. Loss had made him quieter, not harder. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She hesitated before picking it up. 3 missed calls, 7 text messages, 2 news alerts. She opened the first headline: local businessman involved in altercation at charity gala. Another followed: Moretti Logistics CEO strikes man at hospital fundraiser. No mention yet of Ethan's slap. New context. Just the punch. Nina exhaled slowly. Downstairs, she could hear movement in the kitchen. The soft rhythm of cabinet doors, the scent of coffee. When she entered, Vincent stood at the counter in a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. The morning paper lay open beside him, folded to the business section. "You've seen it," she said. "Yes." He slid the paper toward her. The article was short, neutral in tone. It referenced a physical altercation and sources close to Hamilton Crest Capital. "They're framing it as instability," she murmured. "They're framing it as leverage," he corrected. She set the paper down. "You knew they'd move quickly." "Yes." "Did you know Ethan would show up?" Vincent met her gaze. "I suspected he might be encouraged." She absorbed that. "Encouraged how?" "Hamilton Crest has been trying to pressure a partnership for months," he said. "When business pressure fails, personal pressure sometimes follows." Her stomach tightened. "So I was the opening." "No," he said firmly. "You were the target they believed was unprotected." The distinction mattered. She walked toward the coffee machine, pouring herself a cup though she barely tasted it. "Ethan used to ask questions," she said slowly. "About you. About contracts. About port access. I thought it was curiosity. Or jealousy." Vincent watched her carefully. "What kind of questions?" "Operational ones," she admitted. "Nothing specific. Just probing." "Did you answer them?" "No," she said immediately. Then softer. "Not intentionally." He nodded once. "You didn't give him anything of consequence." "How can you be sure?" "Because if you had," he said calmly, "he wouldn't have needed a public scene." The logic was steady, measured. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an old coworker. "Are you okay? I saw the video." "What video?" she asked. Vincent's expression tightened slightly. "Security flagged footage online early this morning," he said. "It's already circulating." She opened the link. The clip was grainy but unmistakable. Ethan's slap. Vincent stepping forward. The punch. Gasps in the background. The comments were already dividing into camps. He had it coming. Unacceptable behavior. Classic Chicago politics. Gold digger drama. She closed the phone. "This is what he wanted," she said. "Partially," Vincent replied. "And the rest?" "To see if I would react predictably." She studied him. "And did you?" "Yes." That surprised her. "You think punching him was predictable?" "For a man protecting his fiancée in public," Vincent replied evenly. "Yes." She considered that. "Then why do it?" He paused before answering. "Because some lines are clearer when drawn visibly." The kitchen fell quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. A knock came at the side entrance. Vincent checked his watch. "That will be Michael." His attorney entered moments later, briefcase in hand, expression controlled. "Morning," Michael said. He nodded respectfully to Nina. "I trust you're both aware of the media cycle." "We are," Vincent replied. Michael set his briefcase on the table and opened it. "Hamilton Crest has formally filed a complaint with the hospital board, suggesting your conduct reflects volatility," he said. "They're pushing for reconsideration of the waterfront contract." Nina's pulse quickened. "They're using this to leverage business," she said. "Yes," Michael replied. "And they're doing it quickly." Vincent leaned back slightly. "What's their exposure?" Michael exchanged a brief glance with him. "Significant," he said. "If we choose to pursue it." Nina watched them carefully. "What does that mean?" she asked. Michael hesitated, then answered plainly. "Hamilton Crest has been under quiet review for irregular financial structures tied to overseas shell accounts." Her mind sharpened. "Ethan works directly under that division," she said. "Yes." Silence settled. The pieces were aligning. "He didn't just come to embarrass me," she said slowly. "He came to provoke you, and to assess how far you would go," Vincent added. Nina looked from one man to the other. "And now," Michael closed his briefcase. Now, he said. We respond. After he left, the house felt heavier, as though something larger than last night's humiliation had entered the room. Nina stepped out onto the back terrace overlooking the water. The air was crisp, clean. Vincent joined her a moment later. I don't want to hide, she said, without turning. You won't, he replied. I don't want this to become a war where I'm just a symbol. You won't be. She turned to face him. Then tell me the truth, she said. All of it. He studied her carefully. Truth is rarely comfortable, he said. I'm not looking for comfort. A long pause. Hamilton Crest wants control of Pier 12, he began. That pier is the last independent access point on the South Corridor. If they control it, they control regional freight distribution. And you refused to sell. Yes. So they tried pressure. Yes. And when that didn't work, they tried proximity. The word lingered. You think Ethan dated me with that in mind? She asked. I think, Vincent said carefully, he may have realized its usefulness after the fact. It was both better and worse than she expected. She folded her arms against the breeze. For years, he told me I wasn't enough, she said quietly. Now he's trying to use me as leverage. Vincent stepped closer, but did not touch her. You are not leverage, he said. You are the variable they miscalculated. She met his eyes. And what happens next? He looked out across the lake. Next, he said calmly, we let the law do what it was designed to do. For the first time since the slap, Nina felt something steadier than anger. Resolve. By noon, the narrative had split cleanly in two. Cable news framed it as a scandal. Business journals framed it as a power struggle. Social media framed it as entertainment. But in the quiet offices of the U.S. Attorney's Building downtown, it was being framed as something else entirely. Nina had never been inside the Everett McKinley Dirksen Federal Building before. The architecture was imposing in a distinctly American way. Concrete, glass, and authority. It did not shimmer like a gala ballroom. It did not charm. It signaled permanence. Vincent walked beside her without touching her, his presence steady but non-intrusive. Michael had arranged the meeting that morning, not as retaliation, as preemption. Inside, the elevator ride was silent, except for the faint hum of cables and the shifting weight of briefcases. You don't have to speak unless you want to, Vincent said quietly. I do, Nina replied. He studied her for a moment, then nodded once. They were greeted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Daniel Harper, a man in his early 50s with iron gray hair and the kind of measured politeness that came from decades of questioning people who preferred not to be questioned. Mr. Moretti, Harper said, shaking Vincent's hand. Miss Caldwell. Nina, she corrected gently. Harper gave a faint smile. Nina. They sat in a conference room with no decorative art, no distractions, just a table, 3 chairs, and a digital recorder. Harper folded his hands. I'll be direct. Hamilton Crest Capital has been on our radar for some time. Last night's incident complicates optics, but it does not erase existing concerns. Nina felt her pulse steady, instead of spike. You're investigating them, she said. Yes. For what? Financial structuring inconsistencies tied to offshore subsidiaries, Harper replied evenly, and potential witness coercion in unrelated civil matters. Vincent remained silent. Harper turned to Nina. We understand Mr. Cole is employed within one of their acquisition divisions. He is, she confirmed. Has he ever asked you questions regarding Mr. Moretti's business operations? The room felt smaller. Yes, she said. Casually. Repeatedly. Specifics. She inhaled slowly. He asked about port access timelines, about contract renewals, about who sat on certain advisory boards. At the time, I thought it was insecurity or curiosity. And did you provide detailed answers? No, she said firmly. I don't have detailed answers. Harper nodded, as though he believed her. Last night's confrontation, he continued, may have been personal. It may not. It wasn't entirely personal, Vincent said calmly. Harper's gaze shifted to him. Explain. Vincent met it without flinching. Hamilton Crest has been attempting to acquire Pier 12 through intermediaries for months. I declined. And Mr. Cole's relationship with Nina began years before my involvement, Vincent replied. But proximity creates opportunity. Harper considered that carefully. Nina felt something crystallize inside her. For 4 years, she said, her voice steady. He told me I wasn't ambitious enough, that I didn't understand how influence worked. I thought he was belittling me. And now? Harper asked. Now I think he was studying the room. Silence settled over the table. Harper turned off the recorder. This conversation, he said, never occurred. Vincent inclined his head slightly. Understood. Outside the building, the city moved as it always did. Taxis weaving through traffic. Construction cranes looming over new developments. Office workers carrying salads back to desks. But Nina felt the shift. Last night had been humiliation. Today was structure. In the car, Vincent remained quiet until they merged into traffic. You were composed, he said. I was angry, she replied. Anger, properly directed, is clarity. She looked out the window at the Chicago River, green and opaque beneath the bridges. I don't want revenge, she said. Good. I want him to stop. He will, Vincent said evenly. That certainty both comforted and unsettled her. When they returned to Lake Forest, the front gate opened automatically. The house stood calm, insulated from the machinery now turning beneath the surface of Chicago's financial sector. Inside, Nina removed her coat and placed it carefully on the rack. What happens if Hamilton Crest pushes back harder? She asked. They will, Vincent replied. And if they try to paint you as unstable? They will. And if they try to paint me as opportunistic? A pause. They already have. She exhaled slowly. For years, I let him define me in small rooms, she said quietly. Now he's trying to define me in public. Vincent stepped closer. Then define yourself first, he said. She met his eyes. How? By refusing to shrink, he replied. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A breath on the other end. Then Ethan's voice. You really think you won? He said. Her spine straightened. I'm not playing, she replied. You just handed Moretti's enemies a reason, he said. You think he won't blame you when this gets messy? She felt Vincent's presence behind her. Not listening in. Not interfering, simply there. I'm not afraid of messy, she said calmly. You should be. The line went dead. She lowered the phone slowly. Vincent's eyes searched her face. He's panicking, she said. Yes, Vincent replied. Good. The word surprised even her. Vincent studied her for a moment longer. You're not the same woman he left, he observed. No, she said. I'm not. Outside, clouds gathered slowly over the lake, gray building against gray. The slap had been a spark. The punch had been a response. But what was coming now would not be loud. It would be methodical. Quiet justice had begun moving. By the end of the week, the noise had shifted. The viral clip of the gala still circulated, but a new headline began pushing its way into the margins of Chicago's business pages. Federal Review expands into Hamilton Crest capital. The article was cautious, careful not to accuse, but the implication was unmistakable. Regulatory scrutiny had intensified. Subpoenas had been issued quietly. Internal emails were being requested. Nina read the headline twice at the kitchen counter, the morning light spilling across polished granite. She felt no triumph, only a sober recognition that something irreversible had begun. Vincent entered, already dressed for the day in a navy suit, his tie a muted charcoal. It's public, she said, sliding the tablet toward him. He scanned it once. They're testing the temperature. And? She asked. It's rising. She studied him. Is this because of us? It's because Hamilton Crest has been walking a narrow line for years, he replied. Last night simply removed their illusion of invisibility. Her coffee had gone cold in her hands. For years, she said slowly. Ethan made me feel like I didn't understand how power worked. Vincent looked at her carefully. And now? Now I understand that power doesn't shout. It waits. He allowed the faintest curve of acknowledgement at the corner of his mouth. A car door shut outside. Michael arrived shortly after, briefcase in hand, expression more intent than before. They've moved assets, he said without preamble once seated at the kitchen table. Offshore transfers within the last 48 hours. Reactive, Vincent said. Yes, Michael replied. Which makes them traceable. Nina listened closely. no longer a bystander in the conversation. Ethan's division? She asked. Central to the movement, Michael answered. Acquisition structuring. Her pulse tightened. He always liked complexity, she murmured. Said simple deals were for small players. Michael glanced at her with professional interest. Did he ever mention shell partnerships by name? She closed her eyes briefly, searching memory. Crestwell Holdings, she said slowly. He once told me it was just paperwork. Michael's pen paused midair. That's not paperwork, he said. Vincent leaned back slightly. That's one of the flagged entities, Michael added. Nina opened her eyes. So the backyard barbecues and lectures about ambition, she said quietly, weren't about building a future. They were about positioning. Vincent did not soften the truth. Yes. Silence lingered around the table. After Michael left, Nina walked out onto the terrace again. The lake was rougher today, wind pressing small waves toward the shore. She wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold but from comprehension. Vincent joined her moments later. You didn't tell me you suspected that, she said. I didn't want suspicion to feel like accusation, he replied. You were protecting me. I was waiting for proof. She turned to him. Do you think he ever loved me? Vincent did not answer immediately. I think, he said carefully, he loved having you. The distinction cut cleaner than she expected. Control, she said. Yes. She nodded slowly. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was not Ethan. It was her former coworker. Marissa. Call me. It's important. Nina stepped inside and returned the call. Marissa's voice was hushed. Nina, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but Hamilton Crest had internal meetings yesterday. They're saying the Gala incident was strategic misdirection. Misdirection from what? Nina asked. From an audit notice they received 3 weeks ago. They're claiming your fiancé staged the fight to distract regulators. Nina closed her eyes briefly. That's not what happened. I know, Marissa said quickly. But they're spinning it. When she ended the call, Vincent was watching her from across the room. They're reframing, she said. They have to, he replied. They're trying to make you look manipulative. I am manipulative, he said evenly. In business, she almost smiled. But not with you, he added. The wind rattled faintly against the windows. Nina moved toward the fireplace mantel where framed photographs sat Vincent's late wife, younger, smiling in a candid shot by the lake. A little girl beside her, hair pulled into uneven pigtails. Loss had shaped him long before ambition did. You've already survived worse, she said quietly. Yes, and you didn't become cruel. No. She turned back toward him. I don't want this to harden me either. It won't, he said. How can you be sure? Because you're asking that question. The simplicity of it steadied her. That afternoon, another call came not from Ethan, but from an unfamiliar number tied to a financial journalist. Nina Caldwell? The voice asked. Yes. I'm investigating Hamilton Crest's recent asset shifts. I understand there may be a personal overlap with Mr. Cole. She glanced at Vincent, who gave no instruction, only watched. I'm not interested in commentary, she replied calmly. Even off the record? Especially off the record. She ended the call. Vincent approached. Good, he said. I don't want to be a spectacle. You won't be. The doorbell rang again. This time it was not Michael. 2 federal agents stood on the porch, badges displayed discreetly. Vincent opened the door himself. Mr. Moretti, one agent said. We'd like to ask a few questions regarding your interactions with Hamilton Crest. Vincent stepped aside without hesitation. Of course, Nina felt the moment crystallize. This was no longer about a slap at a gala. This was about systems, about leverage miscalculated, about quiet investigations unfolding behind marble walls and corporate glass. As the agents entered, Vincent glanced briefly at Nina. Not reassurance. Partnership. She straightened her shoulders. For years, Ethan had told her she wasn't built for rooms where decisions were made. Now, federal agents stood in her foyer, and she did not shrink. The federal agents were polite. That was what unsettled Nina most. They were not accusatory. They did not posture. They removed their coats carefully in the foyer, accepted coffee when offered, and thanked Vincent for his time. Politeness meant they were confident. Agent Rebecca Torres did most of the speaking. Mid-40s, composed, observant eyes that missed very little. Her partner, Agent Miller remained quieter, taking notes with disciplined efficiency. "We're aware of the public narrative," Torres began once they were seated at the dining table. "We're less interested in the gala and more interested in timing." "Timing of what?" Vincent asked evenly. "Hamilton Crest initiated significant asset transfers within 24 hours of that incident," she replied. "That suggests anticipation." Nina listened without interrupting. Vincent folded his hands on the table. "You believe the confrontation was coordinated?" "We believe Mr. Cole may have been acting under more than personal motivation." "That's a diplomatic way of putting it," Vincent said. Torres did not smile. "It's an accurate one." Miller slid a folder across the table. Inside were transaction summaries, flagged subsidiaries, and highlighted timestamps. Nina leaned slightly forward. "He was nervous all week," she said quietly. Both agents looked at her. "Before the gala," she clarified. "Ethan. He texted me twice that afternoon. Asked if I'd be there. Asked who else would be attending." Torres exchanged a glance with Miller. "And did you respond?" she asked. "Yes. I said I'd be there. That it was a hospital fundraiser." "Did you mention Mr. Moretti would attend?" "He was on the invitation," Nina replied calmly. "Everyone knew he'd attend." Torres nodded once. "Mr. Moretti," she continued, "have you had any direct communication with Mr. Cole in the past 6 months?" "No." "Indirect?" "No." The questions continued for nearly an hour. Precise, sequential, methodical. When the agents finally stood to leave, Torres paused near the doorway. "Miss Caldwell," she said, "if Mr. Cole contacts you again, we need to know immediately." "He already has," Nina replied. Vincent's eyes shifted toward her, but he did not interrupt. "When?" Torres asked. "Yesterday afternoon. A brief call. He suggested this would get messy." Torres's expression sharpened slightly. "Did he threaten you?" "No, not directly. Indirect threats count." Nina held her gaze steadily. "I understand." When the door closed behind them, the house felt altered, not violated, observed. Vincent remained still for a long moment. "You didn't tell me he called again," he said. "I handled it," she replied. "That's not the point." She met his gaze without flinching. "I don't want to be shielded from everything," she said. "If I'm in this, I'm in it." A muscle shifted in his jaw. "I don't shield you," he said carefully. "I calculate risk, and I am part of that calculation." "Yes." Silence settled between them, not hostile, honest. "Then trust me with it," she said. He studied her for several long seconds. "I do," he answered finally. The admission was quiet, but it carried weight. That afternoon, headlines intensified. Hamilton Crest executive under review. Investment firm faces federal scrutiny. Ethan's name began appearing in smaller print beneath broader corporate language. By early evening, his photograph circulated online corporate headshot. Confident smile. Carefully constructed ambition. Nina stared at it from the kitchen island. "That smile," she murmured. Vincent approached behind her. "You recognize it. It's the one he used when he was lying." Vincent did not ask how she knew. He understood patterns. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was not a call. It was a message. Unknown number. "You have no idea what you've started." She showed Vincent. He read it once. "Forward it to Torres," he said calmly. She did. Seconds later, another message appeared. "Unknown number. He won't be able to protect you forever." Her pulse slowed instead of quickened. "That's not Ethan," she said. Vincent's gaze sharpened. "No," he agreed. "It isn't." The implication was heavier. Hamilton Crest was larger than one man's wounded pride. "I'm not afraid," Nina said quietly. "I know," Vincent replied, but he stepped closer anyway, not possessively, protectively. Later that night, as wind pressed against the lake-facing windows, Nina stood alone in the dimly lit living room. The house was quiet except for the distant hum of security systems recalibrating. She touched her cheek unconsciously. The redness was gone, but the memory remained, not of the pain, but of the choice that followed. Vincent entered carrying 2 glasses of red wine. "For sleep," he said lightly. She accepted one. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly. "The punch?" "Yes." He considered. "No." "Even knowing what it triggered?" "Yes." She studied him carefully. "Why?" Because some acts clarify character, he said. His and mine. She absorbed that. And mine? She asked. He stepped closer. You didn't apologize for existing, he said. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling faintly against the glass. Nina thought about the messages, the agents, the headlines. For years, Ethan had convinced her she was too soft for the real world. Now the real world was knocking on her door, and she had not stepped back. Her phone buzzed once more. This time, it was Agent Torres. We've traced the messages. Not Cole. Internal source at Hamilton Crest. Pressure escalating. Stay alert. Nina read it twice. They're unraveling, she said. Vincent nodded. Yes. She looked toward the dark water beyond the windows. This isn't about embarrassment anymore. No, he agreed. It's about exposure. He raised his glass slightly. To exposure, he said. She almost smiled. The slap had been public. The punch had been immediate. But this was the slow tightening of consequence, and it had only just begun. 3 days later, Ethan Cole was arrested. It did not happen with spectacle. There were no flashing lights outside the Lake Forest estate. No reporters crowding the gates. The arrest took place downtown, inside Hamilton Crest's glass and steel headquarters overlooking the Chicago River. Federal agents entered through the front doors at 9:12 a.m. By 9:27, Ethan was in handcuffs. Nina learned about it from Agent Torres. They picked him up on financial conspiracy and obstruction, Torres said over the phone. We also added witness intimidation based on the messages routed through his internal division. Nina closed her eyes briefly. Was it him? She asked. Not directly, Torres replied. But he authorized the department responsible. That's enough. After the call ended, Nina stood still in the center of the kitchen. Vincent entered moments later, already aware. News moved quickly in his world. It's done, he said. For now, she replied. He studied her face carefully. This isn't victory, she said quietly. No, he agreed. It's process. She nodded. By noon, every major Chicago outlet had picked up the story. Hamilton Crest executive arrested in federal investigation. The Gala video resurfaced alongside the headline, reframed now as foreshadowing rather than scandal. Nina watched the coverage without emotion. Ethan's corporate portrait appeared again, this time beside the word arrested. For years, he had controlled rooms through tone and insinuation. Now he was being escorted through one. Her phone rang unexpectedly. It was Ethan's mother. Nina stared at the name before answering. Hello? There was silence on the other end for several seconds. I suppose you've heard, Mrs. Cole said finally, her voice brittle but controlled. Yes, Nina replied gently. I won't pretend I approve of how you handled things. The older woman continued. But I will say this, if he's guilty, he deserves consequences. The honesty surprised her. I never wanted this, Nina said quietly. No one ever does, Mrs. Cole replied. But sometimes young men mistake entitlement for destiny. The line went quiet. I'm sorry for the slap, the woman added after a moment. No one raised him for that. Nina swallowed. Thank you. After the call ended, she stood in stillness. Vincent approached from the doorway. His mother? He asked. Yes. And? She sounded tired. Vincent nodded. Shame ages people quickly, he said. The afternoon brought more developments. Hamilton Crest's board issued a statement distancing itself from Ethan. 2 additional executives were placed on administrative leave. Federal subpoenas expanded. Michael arrived with updated filings. They're cooperating now, he said, voluntarily. Fear changes posture, Vincent replied calmly. Nina listened, absorbing each detail. For the first time since the gala, she felt something unexpected. Relief, not because Ethan had been arrested, but because the truth had surfaced without distortion. That evening, Vincent suggested they leave the estate. Dinner, he said. Public. She raised an eyebrow. Strategic? Yes. They chose a quiet steakhouse in the city, dim lighting, leather booths, the kind of place where conversations were respected. When they entered, heads turned briefly, then lowered. No one stared openly. Chicago understood power, but it also understood restraint. They were seated near the back. Vincent ordered without consulting the menu. You've been here before, she observed. For years. She smiled faintly. The waiter poured wine. For a moment, they ate in silence. Then Nina set down her fork. "Do you think he ever believed he'd be caught?" she asked. Vincent considered. "No. Why?" "Because men who mistake manipulation for intelligence often overestimate both." She leaned back slightly. "He used to tell me I was too emotional to succeed in finance," she said, "that I'd never survive a negotiation." Vincent's expression softened. "You negotiated your way out of him," he said. She almost laughed. "That's different." "It's not." A nearby table began discussing the news quietly. Nina caught fragments. Federal audit, asset transfers, too aggressive. No one mentioned her name. That felt like progress. After dinner, they walked along the river briefly. The city lights reflected in fractured gold across the water. "You're quieter tonight," Vincent observed. "I keep thinking about something Agent Torres said," she replied. "What?" "That exposure isn't punishment. It's illumination." He nodded. And I'm glad it's illuminated." He studied her profile against the skyline. "You're not angry anymore," he said. "No," she admitted. "What are you?" She thought carefully. Resolved, they stood in silence for a while, watching boats drift slowly beneath the bridges. Finally, she turned to him. "Do you ever worry this world will swallow us?" He did not answer immediately. "It hasn't yet," he said finally. "That's not what I asked." He met her gaze directly. "Yes," he said. "I worry." The honesty steadied her more than denial would have. "But fear doesn't dictate direction," he added. She nodded. As they walked back toward the car, Nina felt the shape of something solidifying inside her. Not dependence, not revenge, agency. The slap had been humiliation. The punch had been boundary. The arrest, that was consequence. When they returned home, her phone buzzed once more. A message from Agent Torres. "Cole is cooperating. He's naming names." Nina stared at the screen. "It's unraveling faster than expected," she said. Vincent read the message over her shoulder. "Yes," he replied. "Do you think he regrets it?" she asked quietly. "The slap." "Yes." Vincent's voice was calm. "I think he regrets miscalculating." That answer felt truer than any apology. Nina placed her phone down and looked out across the darkened lake. The night was still. For the first time since the gala, she did not feel watched. She felt awake. The courtroom was smaller than Nina expected. Not intimate, but contained. Wood-paneled walls. The American flag positioned behind the judge's bench. A seal mounted high above everything else. The architecture was not meant to impress. It was meant to remind. Federal court did not shimmer. It weighed. Nina sat in the second row beside Michael, hands folded neatly in her lap. Vincent sat on her other side, posture composed, expression unreadable. He had declined to sit at counsel table despite the prosecutor's quiet invitation. He was not on trial. Ethan was. He entered from a side door wearing a navy suit that no longer fit the same way it once had. His confidence, once tailored and precise, had loosened at the seams. He did not look at Nina immediately. When he finally did, it was brief. Not anger, not remorse, calculation. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The charges were read clearly. Financial conspiracy, structuring to avoid federal reporting requirements, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. Each word landed like a measured stone. Ethan's attorney rose, voice controlled, attempting to frame the situation as corporate mismanagement rather than deliberate fraud. He referenced stress, competitive pressure, regulatory confusion. Nina listened without reaction. Then, the prosecutor stood. Assistant U.S. Attorney Harper did not raise his voice. He did not dramatize. He presented evidence. Email trails, asset transfers time-stamped within minutes of internal warnings, recorded calls, text messages, and finally, the video from the gala. The screen lowered from the ceiling. The clip played without commentary. The slap, the accusation, Vincent stepping forward, the punch, gasps from the room. Then Ethan's voice again, distorted but unmistakable. "You don't belong here." The prosecutor paused the footage. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "this moment is not the crime charged. It is the catalyst that revealed intent." He outlined the timeline. The federal audit notice received by Hamilton Crest 3 weeks before the gala. Internal panic, asset movement, messages routed through Ethan's division. And the escalation, Mr. Cole believed he was applying pressure, Harper concluded. Instead, he exposed structure. Ethan's attorney objected twice. Both objections were overruled. Nina did not look at Ethan while the evidence was read. She looked straight ahead. When the prosecutor called her name, the room shifted slightly. She stood, walked, took the oath. Her voice did not tremble. "Miss Caldwell," Harper began. "How long were you in a relationship with the defendant?" 4 years. During that time, did he discuss his work frequently? Yes. Did he ever describe using personal relationships for business leverage? She paused carefully. Not directly, she said. But he often spoke about proximity as advantage. Can you elaborate? He believed that access was currency, she replied. That being close to decision-makers mattered more than merit. The courtroom was silent. Did you ever provide him confidential information regarding Mr. Moretti's operations? No. Did he attempt to obtain such information? Yes. A slight shift moved through the gallery. What happened at the gala? Harper asked. Nina did not hesitate. He struck me, she said evenly. Why? He believed I had betrayed him by moving forward. And had you? No. Did Mr. Moretti instruct you to attend that event to provoke the defendant? No. Did anyone instruct you to attend? No. Harper nodded. No further questions. Ethan's attorney rose slowly. Miss Caldwell, he began, tone softened deliberately. Isn't it true that you began your relationship with Mr. Moretti shortly after ending things with my client? Yes. And that Mr. Moretti is significantly wealthier and more powerful? Yes. Would you agree that proximity to power can alter perspective? Nina met his gaze steadily. It clarifies it, she replied. A faint murmur rippled through the back of the courtroom. The attorney adjusted his glasses. Isn't it possible that you misinterpreted my client's questions about business as manipulation when they were simply curiosity? No, she said calmly. Why not? Because curiosity doesn't escalate to violence when denied. Silence fell heavy. No further questions, the attorney said quietly. Nina stepped down. When she returned to her seat, Vincent did not touch her. He did not need to. The remainder of the hearing moved swiftly. Hamilton Crest's internal financial officer had accepted a plea agreement. Ethan, faced with documented evidence and cooperating witnesses, had shifted posture. He had begun naming names. The judge adjusted his glasses and delivered his ruling with measured gravity. Mr. Cole, financial misconduct at this scale undermines public trust. Attempts to intimidate witnesses compound that harm. This court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to sentencing. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Ethan was remanded pending further review. As he was escorted out, he glanced once more toward Nina. This time, there was no calculation, only realization. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Vincent paused before descending the steps. You don't have to speak, he said quietly. I know. She stepped forward anyway. Reporters called out questions about the gala, about retaliation, about business wars. Nina raised her hand slightly. This is not a spectacle, she said clearly. It's a reminder. Actions have consequences. Are you satisfied with today's ruling? One reporter asked. She considered the word carefully. Satisfied isn't the right word, she replied. Resolved is. She stepped back. Vincent said nothing. They entered the car without further comment. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, Nina looked back once at the courthouse. It stood unchanged, impartial, solid. For years, Ethan had framed himself as the architect of her confidence. Today, he stood as the architect of his own collapse. Vincent glanced at her. You were steady, he said. So were you, she replied. The car merged into traffic. Chicago moved forward. The slap had been a moment. The courtroom had been process. The outcome would be lasting. 6 weeks later, the air over Chicago felt different. Not cleaner, not lighter, just settled. The sentencing took less than an hour. Ethan stood straighter than he had during the preliminary hearing, but the edge was gone. Cooperation had reduced his exposure, but not erased it. The judge spoke in measured tones about responsibility, deterrence, and the cost of financial crimes that ripple far beyond balance sheets. When the sentence was delivered reduced, but substantial, Ethan did not look at Nina this time. He looked at the floor. It was over. Not dramatically, not with applause, just final. Outside, the press presence was thinner than before. Scandals burn fast in America. Consequences move slower. Nina and Vincent declined comment. They drove north in silence, the skyline shrinking behind them as Lake Michigan opened wide to their right. At the Lake Forest estate, autumn had begun edging the trees in gold. The wind carried the faint scent of turning leaves. It felt like a different season than the one that had held the gala. Inside, the house was calm. No agents, no attorneys, no urgent calls. Vincent removed his jacket and set it neatly over the back of a chair. "It's done," he said. "Yes," Nina replied, but the word felt larger than its syllable. She walked to the terrace doors and stepped outside. The lake was steady today, small waves lapping against the distant shoreline. The sky stretched wide and pale. Vincent joined her, hands in his pockets. "You're quiet," he observed. "I thought I'd feel something louder," she admitted. "Anger?" he asked. "Relief, vindication, maybe even sadness. And I feel grounded." He considered that. "That's better," he said. She turned toward him. "For years, I thought closure would be dramatic," she said, "that it would come with apologies or explanations. It rarely does," Vincent replied. "Instead, it came with paperwork." He allowed the faintest smile. "Yes." They stood side by side, not touching, just sharing the view. After a moment, Nina spoke again. "I've been thinking about what you said, about some acts clarifying character. And," he asked, "I used to think strength meant endurance. Taking it, absorbing it." She paused. "Now I think it means drawing a line and standing by it." Vincent nodded once. "Lines define territory," he said. "Without them, everything blurs." She looked back toward the house, toward the life waiting inside. "Do you ever regret choosing this world?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. "My wife didn't choose it," he said quietly. "It chose her by proximity." Nina absorbed the weight behind the words. "And you?" she pressed gently. "I chose it young," he said, "and then I learned how to survive it." "Is that what you're teaching me?" she asked. "No," he replied. "I'm teaching you how to navigate it without losing yourself." The distinction mattered. Her phone buzzed once in her hand. A message from Agent Torres. Sentencing finalized. Hamilton Crest restructuring under federal oversight. No further action expected at this time. Nina read it twice. "No further action," she said softly. Vincent exhaled once. "That's as close to peace as business ever gets." They went back inside. That evening, Vincent suggested dinner at home. No restaurants, no cameras, just the two of them. He cooked simple, deliberate movements in the kitchen. Pasta with garlic and olive oil, grilled chicken, a salad dressed lightly. Nothing extravagant. They ate at the long wooden table near the windows. Halfway through the meal, Nina set down her fork. "There's something I need to say," she began. He looked up immediately. "I don't want to be protected from your world," she said. "But I don't want to disappear into it either." "You won't," he replied. "That's not a promise you can keep alone." He leaned back slightly, considering her carefully. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking that we build something parallel," she said. "Not just attached." He studied her for a long moment. "Explain." "I want to work again," she said. "Not in your shadow. Not as a symbol. I want to use what I've learned." "In what way?" She met his gaze steadily. "There are women who leave situations like mine and don't have rooms full of witnesses, or attorneys, or federal agents." He understood immediately. "You want to start something," he said. "Yes." "A foundation?" he asked. "An advisory group," she corrected. "Legal navigation, financial literacy, protection without ownership." Vincent was silent for several seconds. "You'd be very good at that," he said finally. "I know." The confidence in her own voice surprised her. He reached for his glass. "You won't need my permission," he said. "I'm not asking for it." "I know." They ate the rest of the meal quietly. Later, as night settled over the lake, Nina stood alone in the living room. On the mantel, framed photographs caught the soft lamplight. She touched the edge of one frame lightly. The gala had been 6 weeks ago. The slap had echoed. The punch had answered. The courtroom had resolved. But what endured was not humiliation or spectacle. It was clarity. Vincent entered quietly behind her. "You're thinking," he said. "Yes. About him? No. He waited. About me? He stepped closer, and she turned to face him fully. For the first time, she said, I don't feel like I'm reacting to someone else's narrative. He studied her expression carefully. You're writing your own? He said. Yes. Outside, the lake moved in steady rhythm against the shore. No headlines. No cameras. No raised voices. Just quiet. Vincent extended his hand. She took it. Not because she needed rescue. Not because she needed protection. But because she chose partnership. The slap had lasted a second. The consequences had lasted months. But the line she drew, that would last a lifetime. This story reminds us that strength is not about how loudly we defend ourselves, but how firmly we refuse to shrink. Real power is not control, intimidation, or spectacle. It is accountability. When someone tries to diminish your worth, their actions reveal their character, not yours. Justice does not always arrive with drama. Often it comes quietly, through truth exposed and boundaries upheld. And perhaps the most important lesson of all, you are not defined by who once underestimated you. You are defined by the moment you decide to stand upright and stay there. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.